And we are fortunate tonight to be joined by someone who will be at that mock hearing tomorrow and the real hearing on Wednesday. Leading off our discussion is Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Mucarsel-Powell of Florida. She is a member of the House Judiciary Committee. Also joining us is Yamiche Alcindor, a White House correspondent for the PBS NewsHour and an MSNBC political analyst. And Leonard Pitts Jr., Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the Miami Herald, is with us tonight. Congresswoman, I've never heard of this kind of rehearsal before. Are your fellow committee members telling you that this is the first time they've ever done this?
They haven't, but let me just say that we didn't decide to get ready tomorrow because the Republicans a mock hearing. We had already had discussions about doing that. We have one opportunity, inviting Special Counsel Mueller, and we have to be prepared. We have to be strategic. And like you said, usually we prepare on our own. We can't be asking the same questions. So I'm actually looking forward to that tomorrow. And
what are the rules of the hearing as you understand it? Is it possible that perhaps not every member of the Judiciary Committee will get to ask questions?
I believe we're all going to be asking questions. We will make sure that everybody has enough time. We've been talking to the chairman about that, and I think we'll all have an opportunity to question Special Counsel.
What we're hearing from Jerry Nadler sounds like he supports impeachment and is treating this hearing as a preliminary procedure to getting to impeachment.
Without formally calling it an inquiry, I think what we're doing is taking this investigation very seriously. Like most of the Congress members that have spoken about the Mueller report have said, most Americans don't have the time to read a 448-page report. We have found substantial evidence that shows us that the president obstructed justice, and I think that it is critical for the American public to understand that, and that is why this hearing is going to be very important on Wednesday. Having said that, we will follow the steps that we need to, and we'll make that decision after the hearing.
Do you support impeachment proceedings?
I came out to support an impeachment inquiry a few weeks ago. Now, I was born in Ecuador. I'm an immigrant, and I took an oath when I became a citizen. I took the same oath on January 3rd when I was elected to represent my community, and it's to defend and protect the Constitution against all foreign and domestic enemies. And after seeing the continued obstruction by this president, not allowing us to question fact witnesses, very important witnesses like White House counsel Don McGahn, former White House counsel Don McGahn, and then having different hearings, listening from experts and prosecutors, I realized that my duty was to protect our country, our democracy. I understand what it is to live under a dictatorship in Latin America. I understand and recognize the elements of someone that has grabbed onto power, that has corruption in his government. And I am extremely worried that people don't understand what could happen if we allow this president to get away with corruption, obstructive acts, and all the high crimes and misdemeanors that we have in the Mueller report.
Leonard Pitts, the news of the night, the Justice Department throwing basically roadblocks in front of the committee, saying that Robert Mueller cannot testify about any deliberations. And that means if there was a discussion among Robert Mueller and his associates about the possibility of the president firing them all and strategic decisions they might have made because of that, Robert Mueller is not allowed to testify to that, according to the Justice Department. Not clear if Mueller has to follow that.
Well, as has become sadly clear in recent days, in many important ways, the United States no longer has a Justice Department. Donald Trump has a very large personal law firm on the Mall in Washington, and I think that's sort of emblematic of where we are as a nation. We've seen institution after institution subverted, institutions that are supposed to serve the needs of we the people. We've seen institution after institution subverted to the personal needs, personal narcissism, and personal ego of this one man. So the Justice Department becomes just one more to bite the dust.
Yamiche, one of the things that's striking about the letter to Robert Mueller is that it comes at a pretty low level in the Justice Department to go to Robert Mueller, an assistant deputy attorney general, but telling him you literally, in every sense, cannot say a word that does not already appear in the Mueller report. You can't talk about, for example, why you can't say anything more on the question of why didn't you subpoena President Trump, because that's a deliberation, that's a decision. He's not allowed to explain any decision like that.
Two of the biggest questions that I've heard from Democrats that they want to answer is, why didn't you force Donald Trump to sit for an interview and you yourself talk to him and ask specific questions? And the second one is, how did you not make a decision on obstruction of justice? How did you decide that you were going to punt that, and where did you want that to go? Did you want that to go to Congress, as it seems in the report, or is Bill Barr right and you were punting that to the Attorney General? So I think the DOJ is understanding that that's the two biggest questions, and they don't want him to answer that. Now, I should say I had a pretty long conversation with the spokesperson for Robert Mueller, and he told me that Robert Mueller wants to stay within the quote, four walls of the report, and that Robert Mueller doesn't want to go any farther than that. He said, look at his press conference that was about 10 minutes long with no questions to see an example of what he wants to bring to the House. That said, I've talked to some Democrats who say they're going to try to go beyond the report because the American people have questions and they want to get those answers from him. But this is the DOJ, in effect, officially telling Robert Mueller, look, you can't answer all the questions that we want to know.
One of my favorite questions, if not my favorite question, is why didn't you subpoena for testimony President Trump? Now, the Mueller report addresses this, and addresses it directly and then in a footnote later in the report. And basically they say they were concerned about the costs of potentially lengthy constitutional litigation with resulting delay in finishing our investigation. There was no time limit on this investigation. I don't understand what the delay is that they're talking about, what the time pressure is they were talking about. There's nothing in the report that explains time pressure.
Lawrence, it's very clear to me, having dealt with some of the counsel representing the administration, executive branch, that the reason why the president was not forced to testify in front of Mueller is because they didn't allow him to. The counsel representing the executive must have told, or Attorney General Barr must have told Mueller, you're not going to get the president to testify. I mean,
but Mueller did not issue a subpoena, which he could have done, and that was his decision, and that is not explained in the Mueller report.
That is true. What I can say is that we have enough in the Mueller report. I know that people have a lot of questions outside of that, but we have 448 pages that outlines Volume 1, the Russia interference, 200 contacts with the Trump campaign, and also Volume 2, outlining the 10 different instances of obstruction of justice. So personally, I think that if we can get that information out on Wednesday, that is all we need. We don't need to go further than that. So I'm confident that we will be able to do that.
And Democrats have essentially been telling me no one reads the book, but they watch the movie. So the idea is that they want Robert Mueller to just be out there in the public, talking on television, so people who maybe have said, okay, that part is over, Bill Barr kind of set the narrative and everyone thinks President Trump is exonerated, they can listen to Robert Mueller's own words and be moved in some way. That's what Democrats' hopes are. It is, though, very, I think, and Robert Mueller is going to be in an interesting place because there are going to be these questions that go outside of those that are going to be questions that normal people want to know. People that I've talked to around the country, especially Democrats who are frustrated by Robert Mueller's decision not to make a decision on obstruction of justice, they want to know, why didn't she make those things? So I think it's going to be an interesting thing whether or not, if he doesn't go any farther than the report, if that's enough for people that are frustrated by it.
Well, one of the big questions is intent on obstruction of justice, and did the president intend to obstruct justice? The Mueller report says that they know the answer to that question, but they won't tell us, because it appears in this footnote where Mueller's talking about not subpoenaing Donald Trump, and he says, we had obtained from other sources allowed us to draw relevant factual conclusions on intent. So Mueller has a conclusion on the president's intent, but he did not put that in writing. And now apparently the Justice Department is saying, you can't tell us the answer to that question.
Since when is ignorance an excuse? Maybe I'm missing something. I don't have a law degree or anything, but since when is ignorance of the law an excuse? That's one thing. The other thing is, with all due respect to the Mueller report and the things that are brought forward there, we've seen the president obstruct justice in real time before our very eyes. If you don't have the Mueller report, you have the Lester Holt interview, which to me is a pretty clear-cut, and again, I'm not a lawyer here, nor do I play one on TV. But it seemed to me a pretty clear case of, I did this because he was getting too close to, I fired James Comey because he was getting too close to things I didn't want him to get close to. What more do we need?
And the Lester Holt video is quoted in the Mueller report, and it is one of those things that Robert Mueller is referring to when he says we had other sources, but he specifically uses the word intent in the report, and he never reveals